We trust science to explain the world, but sometimes reality breaks. Tonight, we analyze 3 cases that shattered the laws of biology and physics. A patient who turned an entire emergency room into a disaster zone with her breath. A girl whose voice carried sounds no human throat should make. And a woman consumed by a fire that left her slippers untouched. Stay with us, because the medical report of the toxic lady reveals a secret that doctors are still afraid to discuss. This is Terminal Trace.
Okay, imagine this. It's a normal night in a busy California emergency room, until it's not. A patient comes in, and suddenly the medical staff around her start dropping like flies, collapsing from some kind of invisible toxic fume that seems to be coming from her body. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but I promise you, this really happened. This is one of the most baffling medical mysteries you will ever hear about. And it all boils down to this one absolutely terrifying question. How on earth can a human being suddenly become a walking chemical weapon? How can someone knock out trained doctors and nurses with just their presence? Was Gloria Ramirez the victim of some kind of freak, 1 in a billion chemical reaction inside her own body? Or was something else going on? Something she was hiding? Let's find out. So let's meet our central figure, Gloria Ramirez. She was just 31 years old, a mother of 2, and sadly, she was fighting late-stage cervical cancer. When she was rushed to the hospital that night, the staff saw a patient in critical condition. What they couldn't possibly know was that she was about to go down in history as the toxic lady. Now just look at how fast everything went sideways. At 8:15 p.m., it's a tough situation, but it's one these ER pros have handled before. But by 8:35 p.m., that's just 20 minutes later, a nurse is on the floor. 5 minutes after that, it's a full-on catastrophe. People are collapsing and an emergency is declared inside the emergency room. And by 8:50, only 35 minutes after arriving, Gloria is dead, leaving behind total chaos. The very first signs that something was off were things you just don't see. The medical staff treating Gloria noticed this weird, oily sheen on her skin, but the real red flag, a strange, fruity, almost garlic-like smell coming from her mouth. You know, to a doctor or a nurse, that kind of smell screams that something is chemically wrong inside the body. And then they drew her blood, and things got even weirder. A nurse, Susan Kane, immediately smelled a sharp chemical odor coming from the vial, kind of like ammonia. Then another doctor, Julie Gorczynski, looked closer and saw these things, little manila-colored particles floating around in the blood. Now, I can tell you, that is not something you ever expect to see in a blood sample. That bizarre chemistry in her blood was just the beginning of the nightmare. What happened next was like a toxic domino effect, as whatever was going on started to spread through the ER staff with terrifying speed. And look at this number, 23. Out of the 37 people working in the ER that night, 23 of them got sick. Think about that. That's not just a coincidence. That's a mass casualty event, and the weapon was completely invisible. And we're not talking about just feeling a little dizzy. Let's take Dr. Gorczynski, who saw those particles in the blood. She was one of the first to collapse. She ended up in the ICU for 2 weeks, she developed hepatitis, and was later diagnosed with avascular necrosis, which means the bone tissue in her knees was literally dying. This is serious, permanent physical damage. So what could possibly explain this? Well, the first official theory from the state of California was mass hysteria. Basically, they suggested that the high-stress environment of the ER caused everyone to panic and collectively imagine their symptoms. But that theory just doesn't hold up, right? If it was all in their heads, how do you explain Dr. Gorczynski's hepatitis? How do you explain her bones literally decaying? You can't. Hysteria doesn't cause documented long-term physical illness. The facts just didn't fit the theory. Okay, so since mass hysteria was a non-starter, investigators had to get creative. And that brings us to a much more complex and frankly much more interesting explanation. Let's call it the wild science theory. Now, this theory came from a pretty heavy hitter, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. We're talking about a top-level government research facility. And they came up with this idea that a totally bizarre and unprecedented chemical chain reaction happened inside Gloria's body, which essentially turned her into a walking toxic event. Okay, stick with me here because this is fascinating. Step 1. They theorized Gloria was using a pain relief gel called DMSO. It's known to have a garlic-like smell.
Check. Step 2. Her kidneys were failing, so she couldn't filter it out of her system. It just built up and up. Step 3. The paramedics gave her oxygen. That oxygen reacted with the DMSO, turning it into DMSO2, which would look like little crystals. The manila particles? Check. And here's the kicker. Step 4. The electric shocks from the defibrillator provided the final jolt of energy to convert that into dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic nerve gas that would have then vaporized right out of her blood. It's a perfect explanation. Except for one tiny problem. It's a huge problem, actually. While it sounds incredibly neat and tidy on paper, this exact chemical reaction has never, ever been proven to happen. No one's been able to replicate it in a lab, and a lot of chemists say there's just no way it could happen inside a human body. It's pure theory. So, what are we left with? Mass hysteria doesn't explain the physical evidence. The wild science theory is just, well, a theory. This is the point where the story takes a dark turn, away from a medical mystery and into the shadowy realm of a potential cover-up. First clue? It turns out that this specific hospital had a track record. There were previous reports of hazardous chemical leaks, which brings up a really unsettling question. What if the toxic fumes didn't come from Gloria at all? What if they came from the hospital itself? And then there's this. It's a tragic, deeply suspicious part of the story. The county's lead investigator on the case, a woman named Stephanie Albright, took her own life just 1 month into the investigation, and her colleagues said she was under immense pressure because of it. And if all that wasn't enough, how about this? A key piece of evidence, a syringe of Gloria's actual blood, the one thing that could have given everyone definitive answers, it just vanished. Poof, gone from the coroner's office. Well, you put all that together, and it's no wonder Gloria's own family came to a single, chilling conclusion. Her sister, Maggie, said it plainly. The family believes there was a cover-up. They felt the hospital was hiding its own deadly mistake and using Gloria as a scapegoat. So where did the official investigation finally land? Well, this is where we get to the final report, a conclusion that honestly seems to create more questions than it actually answers. Just look at how this doesn't add up. The autopsy, which was finally done 2 months later, actually confirmed that chemicals consistent with that wild science theory were present. But then the official cause of death is listed as kidney failure from cancer. And the staff illnesses, the ones that caused lifelong damage, they officially blamed that on mass hysteria. It makes no sense. The official report literally contradicts itself. And so, 10 weeks after that chaotic night, Gloria Ramirez was finally buried in a sealed casket. And with her burial, any chance for another team of scientists to examine her body was gone for good. The truth, whatever it was buried right there with her. So in the end, we're left with 2 pretty wild possibilities. A 1 in a billion chemical accident that turned a woman into a poison gas factory, or a finely orchestrated cover-up to hide a hospital's fatal error. So I have to ask you, what do you think? Do you believe in the wild science, or do you believe something much more sinister was at play? The case might be officially closed, but for me, this mystery is wide open.
Germany, 1976. This isn't a movie, it's a legal transcript. Anneliese Michel underwent 67 exorcism rites in 10 months. She stopped eating, barked like a dog, and spoke in voices that experts confirm were physically impossible for a 23-year-old girl. She died of starvation and dehydration, leading to the conviction of her parents and priests. Was it untreated temporal lobe epilepsy, or did she truly become a vessel for something that science refuses to name? The recordings still exist, and they don't sound like a sick girl. They sound like the end of the world.
67 exorcisms, dozens of audio tapes just filled with screams that sound anything but human. We're going to be talking about the story of Anneliese Michel, a young German woman whose tragic death sits at this terrifying crossroads. Was she really possessed by demons? Or was she the victim of a religious fervor that just tragically pushed modern medicine away? Okay, so let's just start with this number, 67. This is at the very heart of our story today. That's the number of Catholic exorcism rites performed on Anneliese Michel, who was only 23 years old over just 10 months. It's a number that led to a courtroom, a conviction, and, well, decades of debate. To really understand how this all happened, we actually have to start at the end. We're in the small German town of Klingenberg with a tragedy that absolutely shocked the world. These are the undisputed, chilling facts of the case. Anneliese Michel, a university student, didn't die from a disease in the way you'd normally think. She starved to death. Her knees were actually broken from constantly performing ritual genuflections. The whole scene was just one of profound, unbelievable suffering. And this brings us right to the core question, the one that fueled a sensational trial and, honestly, continues to haunt us today. Was her death the final battle in a spiritual war for her soul? Or was it a completely preventable death, caused by the negligence of the very people who were supposed to protect her? So how did it get to this point? Because before any priests arrived, doctors had been involved for years. To get the full picture, we have to go back and look at this whole case through the lens of medical science. Anneliese's medical ordeal started when she was just 16. She had this violent convulsion, which led to a diagnosis of temporal lobe epilepsy. For the next 5 years, doctors tried pretty much everything: anticonvulsants, even antipsychotics to deal with these terrifying visions of devil faces and voices telling her she would rot in hell. But nothing was working. Her condition just kept getting worse. And this is where you can really see the central conflict, the two worlds just colliding. For every single medical diagnosis, there was an equally powerful spiritual interpretation. What doctors were calling temporal lobe epilepsy, her family saw as her being unable to even walk past a crucifix. What was diagnosed as psychosis was heard as the voices of actual demons. Her erratic, aggressive behavior wasn't seen as a symptom of an illness, but as a sign of something otherworldly inside of her. And what's wild is there's even a potential medical bridge between these two worlds. Some experts point to something called Geschwind's syndrome. It's a condition linked to temporal lobe epilepsy that can cause an intense, obsessive focus on religion. So it really makes you wonder, could her deep piety and her terrifying symptoms have come from the exact same neurological source? So with 5 years of medical treatments failing, and her symptoms just getting more and more extreme, Anneliese and her devoutly Catholic family became convinced this wasn't a sickness of the brain, it was a sickness of the soul. And they turned toward an ancient and very controversial solution. Now, to understand why she accepted this path, you really have to understand her psychology. Anneliese was raised with this incredibly heavy sense of religious duty. She believed she had to atone for a sin her mother had committed years before. She took it so seriously she would sleep on a cold stone floor as penance for strangers. This belief that she was chosen to suffer for others is so crucial to understanding why she not only put up with the exorcisms, but eventually actually asked for them. The road to exorcism wasn't a quick one. The family first appealed to the church, but they were turned away, told to go seek more medical care. But they kept pushing. As Anneliese's condition got worse, aggression, self-harm, and extreme aversion to holy objects, a local priest became convinced. Finally, in 1975, Bishop Josef Stangl gave his permission, but only if it was all kept totally secret. And at that point, at Anneliese's own request, all medical treatment stopped. The priests started the rites, and here's the crucial part: they recorded them. On dozens of tapes, they captured what they believed was a war with demonic entities. And those entities, speaking through Anneliese's voice, began to name themselves. The first was, well, the most infamous of all. The names just kept coming, each one a figure of historical evil and betrayal. The voices they captured on those tapes are just guttural, violent, and deeply disturbing. They shift between these whispers and just enraged screams. And then came the final, shocking names that the priests said they'd identified. Tyrants, murderers, just figures of pure evil from all of human history. For the priests and her family, this was the ultimate proof. They weren't fighting an illness, they were fighting a legion. For nearly a year, this was Anneliese's reality. 1 or 2 sessions every single week, each one lasting up to 4 hours. During this time, she started to refuse all food and water, believing that this final act of suffering was all part of her atonement. After her death, the secret rites became a very public case. The German legal system was forced to step in and try to make some sense of this unbelievable tragedy. The science of it was unequivocal. The autopsy found 0 supernatural cause of death. Anneliese Michel died from starvation and a lack of water. Her body was broken, emaciated. An investigator even said that her death could have been prevented as little as 1 week before the end. What's really crucial here is that the court did not, and really could not, rule on whether Anneliese was actually possessed. The defense played those horrifying audio tapes in the courtroom, but the prosecution just focused on the facts. Doctors testified she was mentally ill. In the end, the court's ruling was pretty simple. Regardless of possession, a human being had been allowed to die. Her parents and both priests were found guilty of negligent homicide and got suspended sentences. But a guilty verdict didn't settle the debate. Not at all. For many people, it just deepened this chasm between two totally irreconcilable worldviews, leaving a legacy that is just as complicated and controversial as the case itself.
In the aftermath, the German Catholic Church drastically cut back on the number of official exorcisms. And yet, at the same time, Anneliese's grave became a pilgrimage site for believers. Her own mother went to her grave believing they did the right thing. And of course, her story became the inspiration for films like The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which brought her terrifying ordeal to a global audience.
So, we are left with the exact same question we started with. Do you see a martyr who chose to suffer for the sins of the world, or do you see a profoundly ill young woman whose treatable medical conditions were just misinterpreted through a lens of faith with fatal consequences?
Perhaps the answer will always lie on that fragile border between faith and reason. Which leaves one final question for you. When you're faced with the unexplainable, when the whispers start in the dark, who do you call for help? The doctor or the priest?
(1951), Florida. Mary Reeser was found in her apartment, or rather what was left of her. Her entire body was reduced to ash, including her skull, which had shrunk to the size of a teacup. To achieve this, a fire of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit is required, yet the plastic near her chair hadn't melted. The newspapers nearby were untouched. Only Mary burned. The FBI called it the wick effect, suggesting her body fat acted as fuel. But the precision of the destruction remains impossible. Did the fire come from the outside, or did Mary's own cells ignite in a moment of biological defiance?
All right, let's get right into it. We're about to explore one of the most baffling, frankly mind-bending forensic cases of the 20th century. This is a mystery that really challenges everything we think we know about fire. So here's the central question, the one that makes this whole thing so bizarre. How can a person be burned to ashes at temperatures you'd find in an industrial crematorium, while a simple pillow right next to her head is perfectly fine? This is the core mystery of Mary Reeser, a case that just blurs the line between a tragic accident and something truly inexplicable. Our story kicks off on a hot summer night, July 2nd, 1951, down in St. Petersburg, Florida. And an absolutely impossible scene was just about to be discovered. So the night before started simply enough. Mary Reeser, she's 67, she takes a couple of sleeping pills, sits down in her armchair to have a smoke. But by the next morning, a hot doorknob is the first sign that something is terribly wrong. It was the only clue to the horrifying discovery waiting for police on the other side of that door. And this right here, this is the paradox at the very heart of the case. An incredibly intense fire completely destroyed Mary's body in her armchair, but look at what was left behind. Highly flammable things like bed linens, a whole stack of newspapers, completely untouched, just a few feet away. I mean, come on, that's just not how fire is supposed to work, right? So when the police finally got inside, this is what they found. It was nothing like a typical house fire. It was way, way stranger. What they saw was almost total incineration, except for a single, eerily preserved foot still in its slipper. And then there's this detail that just gives you chills. Her skull. It had somehow inexplicably shrunken down to the size of a teacup. That's a detail that still stumps forensic experts to this day. Okay, to put this in perspective, to reduce a human body to this state, experts figure the fire must have hit at least 1,500 degrees Celsius. I mean, that is literally the temperature of a commercial crematorium. A fire that hot should have torn through the entire apartment building, not just one little corner of a room. So you have this impossible crime scene, right? The local police were stumped, so they did what you do, they called in the FBI. They needed a rational, scientific explanation, and they believed they found one. The official story hinges on this phenomenon called the wick effect. Now, the idea here is that the human body can essentially turn into an inside-out candle. It sounds crazy, but it's a rare, scientifically documented occurrence.
So how in the world does a person become a candle? Well, it's a pretty gruesome process, but it is also fascinating from a scientific standpoint.
The FBI's theory went something like this. Mary Reeser fell asleep. Her cigarette dropped and lit her nightgown. Then, the heat started to melt her own body fat, which soaked into the fabric of the nightgown, the wick. This created a slow, contained, but very hot fire that just burned for hours, fueled by her own body. So, for the FBI, this was the crucial point. They could explain it with science, no matter how bizarre it seemed. This wasn't something supernatural. No spontaneous human combustion here. Just a tragic, contained accident. Case closed. Or was it? Well, that official explanation, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly when you look closer. For every single answer the wick effect seemed to provide, the crime scene just threw back a new, even harder question. See, the wick effect is usually a low-temperature, smoldering kind of fire, but the evidence at the scene pointed to extreme heat, hot enough to destroy bone, which is incredibly difficult to do. And again, if a dropped cigarette started all this, how did it manage to ignite Mary, but completely miss that stack of highly flammable newspapers right next to her? It just doesn't add up. And it wasn't just us asking these questions. Even seasoned experts who consulted on the case, like the physical anthropologist Dr. Krogman, were just floored. He said he just couldn't accept the official conclusion, pointing out that the scene contradicted everything he knew about how fire is supposed to behave. So here we are, more than 70 years later. The death of Mary Reeser is officially a closed case, but for a lot of people, it is far, far from solved. And you know, maybe the most unsettling part of this whole thing is that Mary Reeser's story isn't a one-off. It's not an isolated incident. If you look through history, there are dozens of similar, well-documented cases, and they all share the same impossible details. An intense, localized fire that consumes a person but leaves the surroundings untouched. Which leaves us with a really chilling final thought. Was the wick effect really enough to explain what happened to the Cinder Lady? Or was she a victim of something else entirely? A phenomenon that science just hasn't put a name to yet. Do you trust the science, or do you believe some mysteries are just beyond our understanding? What do you think really happened?
Gloria, Anneliese, and Mary. 3 women whose stories ended where logic fails. They are the cracks in our understanding of the universe, the traces that prove we don't know as much as we think. Is the world purely material, or are there forces waiting to ignite within us? Which of these impossible cases do you find the most disturbing? Let us know in the comments. Some traces are written in blood, others in ash. This is Terminal Trace,